I never thought the happiest day of my son's life would become the day I finally stopped being invisible. My name is Diana, and for 30 years, I've lived quietly in the suburbs, working as a bookkeeper for small businesses, raising my son Ryan, alone after his father passed when Ryan was just 5 years old. I chose simplicity. I chose to blend into the background. What I never expected was that my future daughter-in-law's family would try to erase me completely. The engagement announcement came on a sunny Tuesday morning. Ryan called me, his voice bubbling with excitement. I hadn't heard since he was a little boy opening Christmas presents. "Mom, I proposed to Sophie last night," she said. "Yes." My heart swelled with joy. Sophie Martinez seemed lovely from the few times I'd met her. Polite, educated, working as a marketing coordinator at a prestigious firm downtown. She made my son happy, and that was all that mattered to me. "Oh, Ryan! That is wonderful. I am so happy for you both. We want to have the wedding next spring. Mom, I want you involved in everything. You are the most important woman in my life, and now Sophie will be too." Those words should have been a promise. Instead, they became a cruel joke. The first sign of trouble came 2 weeks later when Sophie's mother, Elena Martinez, invited me to lunch at an upscale bistro downtown. I dressed carefully in my best navy dress, simple but elegant, and arrived on time. Elena was already seated, wearing what I could tell was an expensive designer suit, her jewelry catching the light as she gestured dismissively to the waiter. "Diana," she said, not bothering to stand or offer a warm greeting. "Thank you for coming. We need to discuss the wedding arrangements." I smiled, settling into my chair. "Of course. I am so excited to help plan Ryan and Sophie's special day." Elena's laugh was cold and sharp. "Help? Oh, Diana, I think there has been a misunderstanding. The Martinez family has very specific standards for weddings. We've already hired the top wedding planner in the city, booked the country club, selected the caterer, and chosen the flowers. Everything is handled." I felt a small sting but tried to remain gracious. "That is very generous of you. What can I do to contribute?" "Well," Elena said, her tone suggesting she was doing me an enormous favor, "you could handle the rehearsal dinner, something small, casual pizza, perhaps. Nothing too fancy, we wouldn't want to overshadow the real celebration." The waiter appeared to take our order. Elena ordered the most expensive salad on the menu without looking at the prices. I ordered a simple soup, acutely aware of her judgmental gaze. "You know, Diana," Elena continued once the waiter left, "Sophie is our princess, our only daughter. She deserves the very best, and the Martinez family has always provided that. We've built quite a reputation in this city." "I am sure you have," I replied, though I noticed she hadn't actually asked me anything about myself or my family. "Sophie graduated summa cum laude from Northwestern," Elena continued, as if I hadn't spoken. "She could have married anyone, a doctor, a lawyer, someone from a prominent family, but she chose your son, and we've made our peace with that." The words hit me like ice water. Made their peace with it? As if my son my brilliant, kind, hard-working son, who'd earned his engineering degree on scholarships and worked his way up to a senior position at a respected firm, was somehow a charity case. I kept my voice steady. "Ryan is a wonderful man. Sophie is lucky to have him." Elena's smile was patronizing. "Of course you'd think so. You are his mother. But Diana, I need you to understand something. This wedding is about the Martinez family's reputation. We have standards to maintain, expectations to meet. I hope you'll adjust your expectations accordingly." The lunch continued in this vein, with Elena making it abundantly clear that I was an inconvenience to be managed rather than a family member to be welcomed. When the check came, she looked at me expectantly. "We'll split it, of course," she said, though she'd ordered appetizers, wine, and dessert while I'd had only soup and water. Walking to my car afterward, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, the sharp ache of being diminished, reduced to something less than human, but I told myself it was just nerves, just a difficult personality. Sophie wasn't her mother, and Ryan loved me. That had to be enough. Over the following months, the message became increasingly clear. I was not welcome as an equal participant in my son's wedding planning. When I offered suggestions for flowers, my grandmother had been a florist, and I'd inherited her eye for arrangements. Elena dismissed them as too simple for their sophisticated event. When I mentioned that I'd love to help choose Sophie's dress, I was told they'd already scheduled private appointments at exclusive boutiques, where Elena implied someone like me wouldn't fit in. The breaking point came during a Sunday dinner at Ryan and Sophie's apartment. I'd brought homemade lasagna, Ryan's favorite since childhood, and was setting the table when Elena and her husband Carlos arrived. Carlos was a successful real estate developer, and Elena never let anyone forget it. "Oh, Diana," Elena said, looking at my lasagna with thinly veiled distaste. "You shouldn't have gone to so much trouble. We could have just ordered something nice." "Mom makes the best lasagna," Ryan said proudly, kissing my cheek. "I've been craving it all week." Carlos surveyed Ryan's modest but comfortable apartment with obvious disapproval. "Son," he said, addressing Ryan in the condescending tone one might use with a child, "after the wedding, you two will need to think about upgrading. Image matters in business. People judge you by where you live." "We're happy here," Sophie said quietly, but her father dismissed her words with a wave. "Happiness doesn't build careers, Mija. The Martinez name opens doors, but only if you present yourself properly." Throughout dinner, Elena and Carlos dominated the conversation with talk of their social connections, their charitable committees, their vacation home in Cabo. When Ryan mentioned his recent promotion, Carlos nodded dismissively. "Engineering is stable work," he said, as if stability were a consolation prize. "Not exciting like development, but steady." I watched my son's face fall slightly, and felt anger flicker in my chest. Ryan was brilliant. His innovations had saved his company millions of dollars and earned him recognition throughout the industry. But in this room with these people, his achievements were reduced to stable work. The final straw came when we started discussing the wedding ceremony itself. "Now, about the seating arrangements," Elena said, pulling out her tablet. "We'll need to be very careful about this. The Martinez side will fill most of the church. We have so many friends and business associates who'll want to attend. Diana, how many people will you be inviting from your side?" "I am not sure yet," I said. "My sister and her family from Portland, some friends from work, Ryan's godparents." Elena's expression grew pained. "How many total, do you think?" "Maybe 25 people." Carlos and Elena exchanged a look that made my stomach drop. Diana, Elena said carefully, "I think we need to discuss expectations here. This is going to be a very elegant affair. The guest list needs to reflect appropriate social connections. Are your people going to be comfortable in that environment?" The question hung in the air like poison. My people, as if my family and friends were some different species that might embarrass them. "My family is perfectly capable of conducting themselves appropriately at a wedding," I said, my voice tight. "Of course," Carlos said, quickly, but his tone suggested otherwise. "It is just that the country club has certain standards, a dress code, behavioral expectations. We wouldn't want anyone to feel out of place." Ryan looked uncomfortable. "Dad, that is not really." "It is fine," Elena interrupted. "We'll figure it out. Though Diana, you might want to give your guests some guidance about appropriate attire. Nothing too casual or colorful." I excused myself to the bathroom, not trusting myself to speak. Standing in front of the mirror, I barely recognized the woman staring back at me. When had I become so small? When had I started accepting being treated as if I were somehow less than these people? But I swallowed my pride and returned to the dinner table. This was about Ryan's happiness, not my wounded feelings. The wedding planning continued with me increasingly pushed to the margins. Elena took over communication with vendors, made all the major decisions, and relegated me to tasks like addressing invitations and organizing transportation for out-of-town guests. When I suggested we might coordinate our outfits for photos, Elena informed me she'd already chosen her dress, and that I should find something appropriate. Translation, something that wouldn't draw attention. 3 weeks before the wedding, I received a call that changed everything. "Mrs. Thompson," the voice was professional, female. "This is Patricia Huang from Morrison, Wells and Associates. I am calling regarding your investment portfolio." My heart skipped. I'd been expecting this call for months. "Yes," Patricia, what is the final assessment? Ma'am, I am pleased to inform you that the Technovision acquisition has been completed. Your original investment of $50,000 in 1995 is now worth approximately $47.8 million. Even though I'd been tracking the company's progress, hearing the final number took my breath away. Technovision had been a small startup developing software for medical imaging when I'd invested. The young CEO had reminded me of Ryan Fay, brilliant, passionate, underestimated. I'd believed in his vision when no one else would. And the Aurora Holdings shares, I asked, those have appreciated to approximately $23.2 million, combined with your other tech investments, and the real estate portfolio. Your total net worth is now just over $89 million. I thanked Patricia and hung up the phone, sitting in my kitchen surrounded by the modest furniture and simple decor I'd chosen. For 30 years, I'd lived quietly on my bookkeeping income, letting my investments grow, telling no one about the financial decisions I'd made in my 20s. Not even Ryan knew. After his father died, I could have revealed our wealth, could have moved us to a mansion, sent Ryan to private schools, lived the life Elena Martinez thought was so important. But I'd seen what money did to people. I'd watched wealthy families destroy their children with privilege and entitlement. I wanted Ryan to learn the value of work, the satisfaction of earning his achievements. Now, watching Elena and Carlos treat us like charity cases, I wondered if I'd made the right choice. The rehearsal dinner was scheduled for Friday night at a mid-range Italian restaurant. I'd chosen the venue carefully, nice enough to be respectable, but not so fancy as to compete with Saturday's main event. As Elena had made abundantly clear, I was expected to know my place. Ryan and Sophie arrived early to help set up, both looking nervous. Mom, Ryan said, pulling me aside, I want to apologize for how Elena and Carlos have been treating you. Sophie's upset about it too. I glanced at Sophie, who was arranging centerpieces with careful attention. She'd been caught in the middle of this tension, and I felt sorry for her. It is fine, sweetheart, I lied. They want the best for Sophie. I understand. You are being too generous, Ryan said. You've worked so hard to make everything perfect, and they keep acting like what? He struggled with the words, like we're not good enough. The pain in his voice broke my heart. This was exactly what I'd feared. Faye, my son, internalizing their judgment, beginning to doubt his own worth. The guests began arriving. My sister Janet, and her husband, Ryan's godparents, my few close friends, and a handful of Ryan's colleagues. On Sophie's side came a parade of dressed relatives and business associates, each more polished than the last. Elena arrived fashionably late in a cocktail dress that probably cost more than I spent on clothes in a year. She surveyed the restaurant with barely concealed disappointment. Diana, she said, kissing my cheek. This is charming. Very homey. Carlos shook hands with my brother-in-law with the kind of firm grip meant to establish dominance. So, you work in construction? Electrical contracting, Janet's husband replied proudly. 30 years, built half the office buildings downtown. Ah, Carlos said, already losing interest. Blue collar. Good, honest work. The condescension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. During dinner, Elena held court at the head table, regaling her side of the family with stories about the quaint rehearsal dinner, and making jokes about mixing with the common folk. I watched my family and friends, good people who'd worked hard their entire lives, being treated as entertainment for the Martinez family's amusement. When it came time for toasts, Carlos stood first. To my daughter Sophie, he said, raising his glass, who has always made us proud. Tomorrow she'll be joining the Thompson family, and while it is different from what we expected, we're confident she'll bring class and sophistication to the union. The backhanded compliment drew uncomfortable laughter from his side of the room. Ryan's jaw tightened, then Elena stood. I'd like to say a few words about blending families. It can be challenging when people come from different backgrounds, different expectations, but love conquers all, doesn't it? Even when one family has to make sacrifices and adjustments. She looked directly at me when she said sacrifices and adjustments, and I felt the blood rise in my cheeks. Sophie has been raised with certain standards, Elena continued. The best education, the finest experiences, connections with the right people, and now she has chosen to marry for love instead of advantage. We support her choice, even though it means accepting compromises." The word compromises hung in the air like an insult around the room. I could see my family and friends exchanging uncomfortable glances. Ryan looked furious, but that is what mothers do. Elena concluded with a patronizing smile. "We sacrifice for our children's happiness, no matter the cost to our own social standing." She sat down to polite applause from her side of the room. The silence from my side was deafening. Ryan started to stand, but I caught his arm. This wasn't his battle. I stood slowly, my heart pounding. Every eye in the room turned to me. "Thank you, Elena, for those enlightening words," I said, my voice steady despite the trembling in my hands. "I'd like to share a story, if I may." Elena looked surprised, but nodded graciously, probably expecting me to deliver some humble speech about being grateful for their acceptance. 30 years ago, I began. I was a young widow with a 5-year-old son and a choice to make. I could have taken the easy path, relied on others' generosity, accepted charity. Instead, I decided to build something for my son's future. I reached into my purse and pulled out a folder I'd prepared that morning. I started small. $50,000 invested in a tiny tech startup that everyone said would fail. The CEO was young, ambitious, underestimated. Faye reminded me of someone. I smiled at Ryan. Elena's expression was beginning to shift from patronizing patience to confusion. That company was called Technovision. Maybe you've heard of them. They revolutionized medical imaging technology. Last week, Microsoft acquired them for $2.3 billion. A murmur went around the room. Carlos leaned forward, his attention fully captured now. "My original investment is now worth $47.8 million, I continued conversationally. "But that was just the beginning. I invested in Aurora Holdings when they were developing cloud computing infrastructure. That is worth about $23 million now. Then there were the early investments in social media platforms, renewable energy companies, biotechnology firms." I opened the folder and pulled out a document. "According to my financial advisor's latest assessment, my net worth is approximately $89.3 million. The silence in the room was absolute. Elena's face had gone pale. Carlos was staring at me as if I'd grown a second head. "But here is the thing," I said, my voice growing stronger. "I could have lived in a mansion. I could have sent Ryan to the most exclusive private schools, bought him expensive cars, made sure he knew all the right people. Instead, I chose to let him earn his achievements, learn the value of work, develop character instead of just connections." I looked directly at Elena, whose mouth was hanging slightly open. "You see, Elena, I knew that real class isn't about designer clothes or country club memberships. It is about how you treat people. It is about kindness, generosity, respect, fake qualities that can't be bought." I turned to address the entire room. "For months, I've listened to the Martinez family make it clear that the Thompson family isn't good enough, that my son, my family, my friends are somehow inferior, that we need to be managed, contained, hidden away so we don't embarrass them." Ryan was staring at me with an expression of complete shock and growing pride. "Well, let me be clear about something," I continued. "Tomorrow, my son is marrying a lovely young woman whom I welcome into our family, but he is not marrying up, as you've suggested. If anything, Sophie is marrying into a family that has built its wealth through intelligence, hard work, and good judgment rather than inheritance and connections." I pulled another document from the folder. "Ryan, I've been waiting for the right moment to give you your wedding gift. This is a trust fund I've established in your name, worth $15 million. It is yours, no strings attached. Use it to build the life you want with Sophie, not the life others expect you to have." The room erupted in surprised exclamations. Ryan looked like he might faint. Sophie grabbed his arm, her eyes wide. "But that is not all," I said, turning back to Elena and Carlos. "I've also made some other decisions. Elena, you mentioned sacrificing your social standing for your daughter's happiness. Let me ease that burden for you." I smiled sweetly. "I've decided to host an engagement party for Ryan and Sophie next month at the Metropolitan Museum. I've just become a major donor, which comes with certain privileges. We'll be having the reception in the Temple of Dender Hall. It is quite exclusive, Faye, only a few people get married there each year. Elena's eyes widened. The Metropolitan Museum was the pinnacle of New York's social events. Getting married there was a status symbol that trumped any country club. I've also arranged for Sophie's dress to be designed by Vera Wang personally. Consider it my gift to my future daughter-in-law. Oh, and Carlos. I saw that you are developing that new luxury complex downtown. I've decided to invest. My holding company will be purchasing the penthouse suite, Faye, the $8 million one. I think Ryan and Sophie might enjoy living there. Carlos was now openly gaping at me. You see, I said, folding my documents back into their folder, I've spent 30 years being underestimated. People see a quiet bookkeeper in simple clothes and assume they know my story, but the truth is, I chose simplicity because I had the luxury of choice. I chose to be invisible because I was confident enough in myself, not to need external validation. I looked around the room at my family and friends, who were beaming with pride and suppressed laughter, but I won't let my son be made to feel inferior by people who mistake inherited comfort for personal worth. Ryan has achieved everything through his own merit. He is kind, intelligent, hardworking, and ethical. Any family would be lucky to have him. I turned to Sophie, who was looking between her parents and me with an expression of amazement. Sophie, honey, you are not marrying beneath yourself. You are marrying into a family that will love you unconditionally, support your dreams, and never make you feel like you have to earn your place at our table. That is worth more than all the money in the world. Elena finally found her voice. Diana, we had no idea. I am so sorry if we. I held up a gentle hand. Elena, there is nothing to apologize for. You were protecting your daughter the only way you knew how, but now you know, she'll be very well taken care of in every sense. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of congratulations, amazed conversations, and Elena and Carlos treating me with the kind of respect that money, unfortunately, seemed to command. But the moment that mattered most was when Ryan pulled me aside. Mom, he said, his voice thick with emotion, I can't believe you did all this for me, the money, the investments, but mostly, standing up for our family. I've felt so small these past few months. You should never feel small, I said, cupping his face in my hands. You are accomplished, successful, and good-hearted. Those things matter more than bank account balances. But why didn't you ever tell me? We could have. Because I wanted you to become who you were meant to be, not who money might have made you. Look at yourself. Ryan, you are proud of your achievements because you earned them. That confidence, that integrity, Faye, that is what is truly valuable. The wedding the next day was beautiful. Elena had indeed planned every detail perfectly, though she spent most of the day treating me with a deference that was almost comical. Carlos kept finding excuses to discuss business with me, clearly hoping to benefit from my investment acumen. But the best part was watching Ryan and Sophie exchange vows. They looked at each other with pure love, unencumbered by family tensions or social expectations. During my mother of the groom speech, I kept it simple. To Ryan and Sophie, may your marriage be built on the foundation of respect, understanding, and genuine love. May you always see each other's true worth, regardless of what the world might say. And may you remember that the best things in life, Faye, kindness, laughter, love, Faye, can never be bought, only given freely. As the evening wound down and I watched my son dance with his new wife, I reflected on the journey that had brought us here. For 30 years, I'd chosen to be underestimated, to let others make assumptions about my worth based on appearances. It had protected Ryan's childhood and allowed me to build wealth quietly without the pressures and complications that often come with money. But there had been a cost I'd forgotten somewhere along the way, that sometimes you have to stand up and claim your space in the world, not for money or status, but for dignity, for the right to be respected as an equal human being. Elena approached me as I was gathering my things. Deanna, she said awkwardly, I owe you an apology. I made terrible assumptions about you and your family. I was wrong. I studied her face, seeing genuine remorse there. Elena, we're family now, let's start fresh. Sophie is a wonderful girl, and you raised her well. That is what really matters. She nodded, relief visible in her expression. Would you like to have lunch next week? I'd like to get to know the real you. I'd like that, I said, and meant it. As I drove home that night, I thought about the woman I'd been at the beginning of this journey, Faye, quiet, accommodating, willing to accept being diminished for the sake of peace. That woman had her place and her purpose. She'd protected my son and built our fortune in the shadows. But it was time for a new version of myself, one who could be generous and humble while still commanding respect. One who could lift others up without tearing herself down. One who understood that true wealth isn't just about money, Faye, it is about the confidence to know your own worth and the wisdom to use your resources in service of love. The morning after the wedding, Ryan called me early. Mom, Sophie and I have been talking all night. We don't want the penthouse, and we don't need the $15 million. My heart swelled with pride. Why not, sweetheart? Because you taught me something important. Money doesn't make you who you are, Faye, your choices do. We want to earn our life together, but, he paused, we were wondering if you'd consider using some of that money to start a scholarship fund, for kids like I was, Faye, smart, hardworking, but without connections or advantages, give them the chance to prove themselves. I closed my eyes, overwhelmed by the man my son had become. That is a beautiful idea, Ryan, but I have a better one. Why don't we do it together? The Thompson Family Foundation. You can help me decide who gets the scholarships, what programs to fund. Make it a family legacy. Really, you'd want me as a partner? Son, you've always been my partner. Everything I built for you. Now it is time to build something together. 6 months later, I was sitting in the Manhattan office of the Thompson Family Foundation, reviewing scholarship applications with Ryan and Sophie, who had surprised everyone by showing a keen interest in philanthropy. Elena stopped by occasionally, having become an unlikely friend after we'd cleared the air about our mutual misconceptions. The woman who had once been content to remain invisible was now actively engaged in changing lives, funding education, and supporting innovation. But the most important change wasn't in my bank account or my public profile, it was in finally understanding that you don't have to choose between humility and self-respect, between kindness and strength. You can be generous without being small, you can lift others up without putting yourself down, and sometimes, just sometimes, the quiet ones are the ones who change the world. Did you like this story? Tell us in the comments which city you are listening from. If you enjoyed this dramatic tale of hidden strength and family dignity, please support us with a super thanks so we can continue bringing you more incredible life stories like this one. Thank you so much for your support, Faye. We look forward to your comments about Diana's amazing journey. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that we highly recommend. There is so much more content on our channel, Faye. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story. With love and respect, **.